Hey, welcome to the shop. I want to begin by just talking about the different types of chisels there are out there and just some basics that I've used in my woodworking career, just some way more than others. And I'm going to focus today on the standard bench plane. The standard bench chisel, because that's the go-to most of all. But I just want to show you a couple other types. I'll begin with an old one. This is anybody guess what that is? Picked this up at a flea market. It is a mortising chisel, and this is a good old one. It measures 1/4 inch wide, so that is the defining factor in the size mortise it will cut. So however the thickness this way is the way they cut. They have a very heavy iron this dimension because they're made to take a strong smack, a strong blow of a hammer on the top to strike down and not fail. And also the handle is elongated a little bit in one direction, actually the same direction as the blade is elongated or thinner here. And that helps you to keep the alignment when you're chopping a mortise right down. Now, here's a little modern version of the same. This is a Marple's chisel. You can see it's got the similar heavy shank here. And then this one's a little bit wider. It measures 5/16. So this makes a nice 5/16 mortise. Now, I've cut a few mortises by hand in my time, but usually in preparation for classes to show people how to cut them. And what good is that if I'm just practicing to teach something that I don't do myself? And in all honesty, it's not something you use a whole lot, unless your aim is to produce furniture that's just fully, completely hand tool made. Then you'll be very knowledgeable and skilled with a mortising chisel. It's nice to have them. Sometimes you got to get into mortises to clean them up. But typically, you'll be cutting your mortises with some variation of machine method because you can cut them so efficiently and effectively without the good old mortising chisel. But an old one like this has a lot of character. Okay, another type is these little guys. These are cute. And they're real stubby. They're short, and they are named for what they were used mostly for, and that is to clean out the small recess of a hinge, a particular hinge called a butt hinge, and these are called butt chisels. But, no pun intended, they're really sweet. What they're used for and what they really shine at is being very easy to handle. Because they're so short, you can hold them and they're very maneuverable. They're really ideal for chopping along the line of between the pins of some dovetails and for chopping out shallow mortises, like I said. But you get great control. Now, because it's very light, it's very balanced when you're using them like this, and you can quickly and easily find a line that you're chopping to. So they're pretty sweet. You can also do the same with a standard bench plane. That's how I actually hold them when I'm chopping the same. But you do have it is a little more top heavy. So if you want to have this in your arsenal, the little butt hinges are fun to have for that greater control in chopping. I don't break these out very often, but I have honed them up. They're pretty sweet. And they're of average tool steel. And here's another one that I had in my cabinet I mentioned last time. And this is a paring chisel. It's long, flexible, and it allows you to pare right flush with the surface. It's nice to have one of these. I do use this fairly frequently. But they're pretty cool because your hand is like way back, the control hand, and you're pressing down with your lead hand and flexing the steel. And they're basically sharpened at a little bit of a lower angle than your standard bench plane. Say whatever I show you today, it's going to be about up to 5 degrees less you could go with it, because you want a very fine shearing edge here, and you use them very lightly. You're not smacking on these, so the edge will last. Even though it's thinner, it will still last fairly well, because although even being ground at a lower angle. And then I have some bench chisels. I thought I'd show you a progression of the chisels I've had over the years. I started out with a set, I think it was 6. And these are them. These were the original chisels I bought like over 30 years ago, I think. And I got 6 of them for $50. I still remember, $49.99. And that was, wow, I really pounded on that one. I use them just for carpentry now, or crazy things where I need to abuse a chisel. But I used to hone these, and they got quite a good edge on them. They didn't hold an edge very long, but I got by quite a while with them. And then I had these. I was asking about what they were, and somebody mentioned they look like Sorbies, and I think you're right, because the handle is very similar to the Sorby handle. I couldn't remember what they were, but these have these nice rosewood handles, and I sprung a little more money when I bought these, and I used these with my after I tired of these after just 2 or 3 years, and then I went to these and paid a little more, got a set of 6, I believe, and they worked really well. And they had a little higher grade metal than those. Then I got these as a prize for a furniture design thing I was in, which was pretty unexpected and welcome. But these are made by the Swiss made, and I was just surprised how sweet and nice an edge these could get. So I've used these quite a lot. I actually have had these in my cabinet and designed my cabinet up here for these spaces for these Swiss made. So these are what are normally hanging up in here. But I only recently have transitioned, and I've been trying out and testing using these. These are Veritas, the PM V11 steel. And they only had 5 in the set. I wish there was a 5/8 inch wide one to complete my set here. So I have to stick the Swiss made in there. But I've been messing around with them, and I'm very impressed with the steel on those chisels. Now, about steel, you can, it is true. It's like the usual, you get what you paid for kind of thing, and you can pay like the Marples level and get some very cheap chisels. I know when I bought these, there weren't all the import options now that you can find made overseas, and I know you can probably get them cheaper than that, but beware, because the grade of the steel is going to be probably pretty poor. If you spend a little more money, you're of course going to get a better grade of steel. So the steel, I'm not going to nerd out on this. I know there are people who could do this way better than me. I'm not a metallurgist, but I have read up. I know a fair amount about steel, but I don't feel like I need to know that much. I just want to know that it's easy to produce an edge, to sharpen, and it will hold an edge in a lot of different circumstances, whether I'm hitting it, striking it, or paring, or whatever. So you get a sense after a while, you're like, wow, that edge is still good. And I have had that range of experiences with quite a number of chisels. But the basic steel that you find out there that's decent, that's really good actually, is the O1 steel. And the O just stands for oil quenched. Okay, so it's when they're doing the whole smelting process or whatever, they heat it up to a very high temperature. They quench it instead of putting that really red hot thing in water. to quench it and cool it down, it goes in oil, so it cools more gradually in the oil, and it reduces the possibility that that steel will develop, will crack or deform in the cooling process. It's really nice steel. It has a very even texture. Like if you got down into the molecular structure of the alloy, it has a very smooth, even texture. So I'm almost certain, someone can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but that that the Swiss made, I know that these Sorbies are O1 steel. They just get a beautiful edge. These just get a beautiful edge. But the thing about the O1 steel is it doesn't hold the edge quite as long. Because of the fine particles and even texture of it, you can get that really sweet, thin, polished surface on that cutting edge. And the cutting edge, by the way, is just the intersection of two planes, the back of the chisel and the bevel. So you actually have to hone both to the same standard of stone to get a really sweet edge. So the O1s, actually, you can polish them up. You can create the edge a little easier, and it will be very sharp, but it won't hold the edge quite as long. So that's not a bad thing if you have a good system for recreating the edge. Then there's the A2. The A2 steel is air-cooled, and that's it's a little different alloy. It's like they add 5%, look, I am nerding out a little here. They add 5% chromium, which creates like a chromium carbide particles when it's heated high. And that gives a better durability to the alloy when it's cooled, and it creates an edge that's more durable and will stay sharp a little longer. The only problem is with the A2 steel, because in the heating process you get those little, they turn into, like, for better use of word, it's like little rocks of this chromium, am I saying this right? Chromium carbide particles. So those can sometimes land right on the edge, and if you sharpen too fine an edge with A2 steel, they can even break out. Or they're so hard, it's hard to get that really, really fine, sharp edge. You can get a really sharp edge, don't get me wrong. But if you're going to have the A2 steel, you want to actually grind it with a little steeper bevel so that it preserves the edge a little better. So you'll know that, like, I should say, in addition, they also have another treatment that they'll treat the steel to make it even harder, and that's cryogenically cooling it down to minus 300 something degrees, which is like, it's just drawing out even further the quench curing of the metal. So by going really low, it adds a hardness factor and durability factor, which you see from Hawk irons do this. And also Lee Nielsen adopted this, I know, with their chisels. So they're cryogenically hardened A2 steel. So really good hard steel. It takes a little longer to hone the edge, and they also recommend that you're a little steeper bevel because of the nature of that steel, but it's still great. The O1 and the A2, just remember the O is, I don't know, I don't have a mnemonic device for, it's just that's a good steel, but you're going to probably pay less if it's O1 steel. It's good steel. It's going to be a good chisel, especially a beginning chisel. And then the Lee Nielsen's of the A2 cryogenically hardened, that's crazy. But this new steel that's out, I'm really impressed by, and that's this PM11. Veritas has it. I know they even make plane irons out of it. It's powdered metal. The PM stands for powdered metal, which it's like a double it's a double smelting process. So they put these different alloys. They have this alloy of metal. They don't tell you what it is, but it's smelted, and then they, with that steel that's created from that first go round, they then atomize that steel into powder, like really fine powder. So you've got like this powdered metal. Then they sift the metal to get all the bigger chunks out. So my suspicion is that there is some chromium like carbide particles in there, but they sift all the big ones out. So you're left with this really fine particle dust. Then they compress it back into like working blocks, I forget the right word for it, billets or whatever. And then they reheat it and smelt that powdered metal into a smooth alloy. And what you end up with is this PM V11. And they did, you can look on Veritas' site about this metal. They tell just a quick little story about how much they tested and how it is for sharpening, how fast it is, how much it holds an edge when it's struck, and how much it holds an edge just over time, and how sharp an edge you create. And it performs in those three categories. It's by far like the highest performer. And just in practical use, I'm really impressed with it. It's pretty cool. It's holding an edge so well, I don't have to touch them up nearly as much. So pretty cool. If you're going to invest, if you're ready to take the jump into a really nice high-grade steel, you can take a look at these Veritas. They're sweet. Now, there's one other type of chisel I haven't mentioned because I don't own any. I own a knife. There are Japanese chisels. Well, you can see it kind of with this marking knife. They lap the steel. It's layered. So you see this end, that bevel end was polished. All right, it was polished all at once. So I didn't polish this area here less than that leading 1/16 of an inch. That's just because that 1/16 of an inch, that's a layer of harder steel that is lapped on the bottom of this marking knife, which is very similar to the way they make their chisels. And then layered on top is a softer, more flexible, pliable steel. And what they're trying to do there is they're getting the best of both worlds, because the harder the steel, the more brittle it is. The harder the steel, the better an edge it can take and stay sharp. But it's inherently subject to dulling or cracking because it's so hard. But by laminating this softer ductile metal on top, it dampens the vibration or whatnot, and it actually creates a backing that allows that hard edge to last longer. So that's the genius of the most of the Japanese chisels. So whenever you hone a Japanese chisel, you're going to see a really bright area right along the edge, because that's the cutting edge anyway. So that's the edge that's preserved to be really sharp and the finer hard steel. So if you get a Japanese chisels, you'll see that. But you'll also see on the back of them, instead of it being flat, dead flat like the American chisels, this isn't really showing you that great, but this is a marking knife. You see that kind of lower area there? This has been like flattened, but this area here is actually a hollow. So when I laid this down flat and honed it on the stone, this wasn't touching right in here. And the Japanese chisels, if you look on the back, they have that hollow all the way up, and it actually gets quite close to the cutting edge and back. And that's actually really cool, because that saves you a lot of time honing the back. If you've ever tried to hone the back of a chisel, you know it takes time, it takes patience, because you've got to get it dead flat. You've got to hone the back just like the front. The good news is you only have to do it every so often. You know, it's once you set it up, you don't have to touch it much at all. But you've got to hone that back dead flat all the way out to the edge. So when you have that hollow from the Japanese chisels, it's a very quick process to hone because you're just honing this one little edge that goes around, the rest is hollow. All right, so I'm not going to show you that, but those Japanese chisels, they rival the best of the American steel as well. So I can't tell you if they're A2. I know they're not the PMV11, but I know they're some kind of really good metal, but it's that combination that makes them shine. Now, I used to recommend always the bench chisels were sharpened at 25 degrees. That was what the standard was. People were saying that all the time. But I have used that and just gone with a flat 25 for a lot of the early years. But recently I've gone with putting like a micro bevel on there. So they recommend that the micro bevel actually, sorry, let me say again. The bevel, the initial grind bevel can be 25 and then put a micro of 30. So you're just honing that small little edge, sort of like you do on the back of a Japanese chisel. It doesn't take you long at all because that's the only part that's cutting. So that's a standard, that's kind of like the standard, I would say. It'd be 25 and 30. Now, if you're using the A2, then you want to go, it's recommended that you go up a little higher. You can grind them closer to 30 and then put like a 3-degree micro bevel. So you're getting up to like 33 degrees, 32, 33, something like that. You can look on Lee Nielsen's website and they'll describe exactly their recommendation. And it's interesting because they will talk about the steel. And that's the optimal when you're using A2 steel. So, but the standard, just figure it's 25 and up to 30. You can go somewhere in between. I know that someone was telling me down at North Bennett, they were sticklers for it being 27 degrees was the perfect angle. And that could be true. So you can go 25 and put a 2-degree micro bevel. I think you're safe when you're anywhere between 25 and 30. Just keep in mind, the lower the bevel angle, the more fragile the cutting edge, because it's just thinner out at the point. So if you can steepen it up a little bit, it is a little more, it's stupid to use the word blunt, because it's not blunt when you get a really good length. But when you're steepening the angle, you're increasing the strength immediately behind the edge. So around 30, I think, is really where you want to be for your standard bench chisel, or slightly less. Okay. When I was mentioning the low angle, you could go. Your final hone could be like 25 on this, so you could grind this down closer to like maybe 23, and then put your hone at 25. Now I'm going to talk about that, and we're going to just take one chisel. I'm going to demo one chisel through the paces of how I tune one up. So I'm going to take one of the Veritas chisels, and we're going to use this to demonstrate. Now, you've got to first flatten the back. So I'm going to flatten the back, and there's a number of ways you can do this. Now, you want to make sure whatever you're flattening the back on is dead flat. So I use water stones a lot for sharpening, and I don't like to flatten the back on a water stone because they go out of shape fairly quickly depending on the quality of them, and it's better to use like a diamond stone, which I have 2 examples of here. This one's got a little rusty, but that's a plate with diamond impregnated surface, but it's pretty flat. I trust that. And then here's a DMT plate, and you can find all kinds of diamond plates or lapping plates, they call them, on the market, that you want something that's dead flat. A cheap version is something like this. You can, sometimes if you know somebody who has a piece of granite, or at the granite, the countertop place, if you can get them to give you a chunk that's maybe like 2 lengths of of a piece of sandpaper long. In this case, this. So that would make it like 22. These are each 11. So if you had something like that was 22 by 9, it would be an ideal setup. Because what you do is, I just use some spray adhesive, and I put some wet dry sandpaper down with, I believe it's like, the coarse I think is 120, and then this is the finer, I think it might be 180. And that makes, the granite is polished to dead flat. So it gives you a really nice surface to hone or flatten the back of your chisels. So I usually just wet it a little bit like this, and then you can hold your chisel. You've got to make sure you stay dead flat. Now, when we talk about plane irons, because a plane iron has the bevel down like this, you can actually give it a slight, sorry, I'm changing that. You can give it a slight micro bevel on the back if it's not critical, because it's up in space. It's not as critical that the back is flat on a plane iron, because they're just at an angled space. With a chisel, the way you use them most of the time is you want to reference off that edge, and when you pair with it, you want it to be dead in line with the back surface. So you don't want any kind of rolled edge or micro bevel on the back of the chisel. We want to preserve that dead flatness there on our bench chisels, okay? So when I'm holding this, I'm making sure I've got good pressure down, and I'm going to keep that thing dead flat. Now, I had this polished. Now I'm messing it up. But I'm getting it. I'm just showing you for effect there. And then this is 1,000 grit diamond stone. Now this has been seen its day. I'm going to just put it up here. But it still works. You can hear it. Now you can go straight lines, or you can go little circles. The main thing is just keep it flat. I usually just go straight lines when I'm doing this. Throw in a circle every now and then. This looks good. Okay? Now, it's not done, but I would keep going. You could use a DMT plate like this. And these have a couple grits. But I'd want to get it to about 1,000 before I go to 1,000 grit, before I go to my water stones. And you just want to see that matte finish go all the way out evenly to the edge. So that's what we've got here. We've got a nice matte finish out to the edge. But it's like a 1,000 grit matte, okay? When we want to set up, sometimes you're going to start with a chisel. This chisel wasn't this way, but I'm going to demo with it. That needs a little work. Maybe you bought it at a flea market. You picked up something on Craigslist or eBay. And they're good chisels, but they've been abused. You need to grind them. I set the grinding wheel, or the steady rest, to 25 degrees. Now the way I do that is I make a little block like this that I have a 25 degree angle on here, and then I'll just take it, cut in front here, I'll set it on my steady rest here and on my guide, and bring it up until the bottom of that angle just sits flat on the wheel, okay? Because it's kind of high up there, but I want to see that flat on the wheel. And I want to see the amount flat on there that's equal to the thickness of my particular thing I'm sharpening, because sometimes you might be sharpening a really thinner plane iron, so you might want to bring it up a little bit more because it's only going to be touching down here. But here, in this case, where I've got a thicker, I've got this thicker metal here, I'm going to be touching up here. Now this is kind of weird because the back, this is explaining why I wasn't getting the exact angle. The back of this, you can see it here, is actually tapered. This is not even. This tapers larger as you come up. So I'm referencing off here. I'm actually going to have a different angle in relation to the bottom of the chisel. So that angle is actually going to be a little different. it's going to end up being a little steeper. So anyway, I could mess around with this till I get it around 25. But I got it set very close to 25 right now. And I'm going to just show you the grind technique that I use. I'm going to advance it up. And once I start to touch the metal, I'm going to just lightly touch it there and then feed it across with my thumb very gently. Okay? So I'll come up, I'll lightly touch it, and then feed it across with my thumb. You don't want a lot of pressure here because the more pressure, the more heat build up there. I like to have a square nearby because as I grind, I want to make sure that I'm keeping it true. I'm a little high on this left side, so I'm going to try to tilt it slightly. So if you're doing this with an old chisel and you had some real digs there, then you'd go until you saw a pure kind of edge across the top. Now, if you happen to get a chisel that was rusted, it was maybe left out too long, and on the back you have a pitted surface, like little craters, the pitting on the back. If it's fully pitted and it's all over the back, it's not worth fixing, okay? Because you'll never get a flat surface on the back. Those pits are always going to be entering into the cutting edge. You just can't polish them flat. You need to have steel that has enough, that's retained enough of its flatness that you can actually flatten it, okay? So once I've ground across like that, let's just say I've done it, I've got it where I want it. I'm going to go back to the bench. Now I've got like this hollow ground, which is fine because I don't have to hone as much. But that's right at about 25 degrees. But I'm going to set it in my guide to 30. Let's go close to 30, okay? So I'm going to use this thing. All right, so I'm going to show you. This is a cool sharpening system that Lee Nielsen let me use. Very cool. I love it. It's got the holders for the stones right there. Keeps them from sliding around. And I've got two stones on here. I've got 1,000 and a 10,000 grit ohishi and Japanese water stones. Now I like to use the water stones because they cut fast and well, that's the main reason, really. I like how they cut and they give you a really nice polished edge. That's not to say this is the only way. I know there's methods of using fine sandpaper on glass that work just fine. There's the sharpen stones. There's Arkansas stones. There's oil stones. There's diamond paste. You can go on and on. But I just like the water stones. They're tried and true. They're really fast and comfortable to use. So it's kind of what you get used to, but I think this is a pretty good method. The other thing about them is they're fairly economical if you buy the lower grade, like this is a king stone. They wear down fast because basically what a water stone is, it's like a cutting grit. Imagine if you had sandpaper that was sandpaper all the way through. There's no paper backing. It's just the particles, the cutting particles, and some type of, it's also like a clay and a binder, like a glue that holds the whole mass together. Because it's these particles and it's like a clay material, it actually is porous. So if you put water on it, it goes right in like a sponge. It's kind of weird. You think of stones being solid. But so these stones you actually soak and let them soak overnight or keep them in a bucket if you're going to know you're using them. And then when you use them, you're you're sharpening and you're getting these nice crystals cutting, but because of the bond is not real great between them, they keep kind of breaking off and refreshing to new particles, new cutting particles that just, that's why it cuts so fast. It's not like sandpaper that can never really clog. It's just always refreshing and giving you a nice cutting surface. That's the good news. The bad news is, because it keeps refreshing, it's going out of flat. So if you're always focusing in the middle, which is very difficult not to overdo it in the middle, you're going to get a little dished out shape to your stone, and you've got to re-flatten them. So that's why we have flattening stones like this. Now, this one's a cheaper model. The bummer about these stones, this is where it really make your head spin, these go out of flat too. So you get this flattening stone for your flattening stone. Actually, I don't have a flattening stone for my flattening stone. But you can use a diamond stone to flatten your flat. So I've gone ahead and flattened these. The Ohishi ones that you get at Lee Nielsen are really nice water stones. They cut fast and all that, but they have a texture to them that's just way superior to the King. And they're just more dense, and they keep flat a little better, and they also sharpen really fast. I'm really impressed with these things. I couldn't get the kind of speed with this in my stones, but they're pricey too. Like a stone like this, I forget, the King might be $30. One of these is around 100. I know the 10,000 grit is a little over 100, maybe 115, something like that. But they recommend, because of the density, you don't even soak them in water. You just need to spritz them, okay? See how it doesn't soak in as fast as the King? It lays on top. Even though this is 1,000 grit, and this is a 1,200 grit, it should actually be resisting more. But it is starting to go in, but it's very slow. Okay, so I'm going to put this in a honing guide, and we'll just do a little more here. I'm just going to set this. This is also the Nielsen honing guide. There are a lot of other honing guides on the market that I have used in classes. This is the only one of this I have. On this jig, these little blocks of wood are set at different distances. So I would actually have to get this dialed in for this particular chisel because of the uniqueness of that taper and everything. Because that angle, that I could get figured out that when I lock it in with that as a stop, this distance is fixed from the honing guide to the end. So I could use something that I could trust, like this little thing has an angle guide on it. There's a lot of ways you can find angles, but when I slide this up, if that's embedded flat against the back, you can't see it, but the back of this chisel is right flat against the 25-degree angle on this angle finder. I don't know what you call it. This is at a Veritas. So that's 25. But I'm going to do the hone. I've already got it ground to 25, so I'm just going to go right over to the 30 degree, and we're going to hone at 30. And that'll make it that much easier, okay? So all I have to do is loosen up my guide, and I'm going to put it in there till it's flat up against the plate. The bottom of that chisel is laying flat against that 30-degree angle. And the roller, so it's held right there. Now I'm going to lock it in. Now I like to start out and just get it to 1,000 grit because I have that I think it's 180 grit from the aluminum oxide stone there. So I'm going to just hit it first on this is my little diamond plate. That's what we lapped. Well, we lapped it on the DMT. And you can see, I'm just starting to get, can you see a little micro bevel there? It's a little heavier on this side. I may not be perfectly square across. But now I'm going to go, this is the 1,000 grit water stone. So I'm going to go to this. I'm going to hold the wheel down, And I'll just try to work the end of the stone. These cut pretty quickly. Now, as soon as I see the micro bevel completely across the edge, I'm going to stop. Now, I think I have this slightly out of square because I'm getting a little deeper there. I'm just about all the way on the right side, so I'm going to just go a little more. And then I like to work, try to work as much as you can on the ends of your stone, and it'll stay flatter longer. Okay, that is all the way across, just a little hairline. I don't want to spend too much time on it right now, but let me move this here. Now I'm going to put the back on the 1000 grit, and I just want to lap this a little bit because when you hone a bevel like that, you get a little burr of wood is rolling, of metal is rolling onto the back. So I'm going to polish that up a little more, and I could do this while it was freshly flattened as well, but I haven't changed it much at all at this point. And that's looking like it's starting to come up to a polish. All right, so that's good enough. Now I want to clean off the chisel. I want to clean off that grit, and I'm going to move to the 10,000. Now, usually I would put a mid-range stone in here, like a 3,000, a 4,000, and then go to the 10,000 grit, almost like sanding. But this is such an amazing stone. You can actually jump right to it, and it will work. It'll work fine. So this is a Nagora stone, and it's nice and flat. And what this does is it cuts in to these finer stones. Boy, the suction. That's how you know you got some flatness going on there. But I'm abrading the surface a little bit with this. What it's doing is it's creating a paste, like a little white paste that is all 10,000 grit. So it's like creating a rubbing compound. And it's going to cut a little cleaner, a little faster. All right, so here we go. Now I'm going to put the the guide right on there. It starts to get polished. You can tell that the stone is getting like a little bit clogged. So look at that. I mean, that's a sweet little polish. That's all you need. That's the micro bevel that's up to like 30 degrees. And I could take it a little more, but then I'd want to lap the back. I want to bring the back up to the same honed stone. Now it's going to take a little longer. All right, so I hit the back. You see that polish coming up? There's still a little bit of 1,000, but it's pretty sweet. And then I go back to this. So this is basically the process, regardless of how many stones, and how fine you want to go. You don't have to go to 10,000. I just do because it's fast cutting. But a lot of times I would just stop at 4 for my chisels. They make 6 and 8,000 grit. Those will be fine too. But when you bring it up to 1,000, man, you have a really sweet hone, and it's really nice. All right, I think that'll do it for tonight. I hope you there's so much more we could talk about, but that's a good crash course. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for being part of this.